everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. We're going to cover everything. We're going to cut through all the propaganda, give it to you straight from left, right, and center. The opinions are what counts.
Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report on Patriot.tv and Rumble. What a week we've had, folks, and we're going to break it down strategically as we head into the weekend on this Friday afternoon. What is really going on here, the geopolitical implications, and, of course, the strategy about what is really happening on the ground. But let's start with this. $90 a barrel oil, up $10 really in the last 2 days. Trump has demanded unconditional surrender. And I would expect that from Trump. Now, strategically, the U.S. and the Israelis have continued raining on targets in Iran, deeply depleting their launchers and their missiles. But again, the Iranian strategy of basically lashing back, withstanding the initial hits. Bear in mind, they've been planning for this for a long time. So if you analyze it from the U.S. and the Israeli perspective, and you listen to Trump and Netanyahu, everything is going ahead of plan. And I happen to agree with them. But like we said on the show earlier in the week, I do believe the drone impact was underestimated. So you have seen massive launchers taken out. You have seen underground tunnels with munitions taken out. You've had actual missiles intercepted. So from a military perspective, and I tend to want to listen to the head of Central Command when he's speaking, General Kane when he's speaking, and they are telling us specifically the military assets that are being targeted and the achievements. But now let's tie this in geopolitically here, because the Iranians are seeing oil spike above 90. They're seeing businessmen in United Arab Emirates and Qatar very nervous right now. They are trying to do what they can to disrupt the economies of the Gulf states, and they're doing a pretty good job of it with very little hand to play. So their strategy is one of trying to poke where they can poke, create disruption among economically stable nations of the Gulf, drive oil prices up, get consumers and businesses to revolt, and to try to get favorable terms on the Iranian terms, settlement terms, and leave the regime in power. That's what the Iranian goal is. U.S. goal and Israeli goal is regime change. Let's make no mistake about it. It is regime change. It has always been regime change. Not allowing them to have nuclear weapons, although the primary goal stated, I believe it was the secondary goal. You could put them up there 1 and 1A. But to think this is anything other than regime change, you're not really reading the tea leaves, because it is. And there may be some Republicans that don't like that. So far, he's received overwhelming Republican support. Only a handful voted against it. Senator Rand Paul and Tom Massey and one other congressman. The rest is overwhelming support. He's even gained support, obviously, John Fetterman on the Democratic side of the Senate, and a handful of Democratic congressmen. So these disruption fears have settled into the marketplace. Stocks were down. They were down about percentage and a half. Almost 2.5% since this started. Folks, that is not a gigantic number. Considering that oil's risen to 90, there is disruption. There's talk even that the Russians are supplying key data to the Iranians on U.S. installations. The Iranians have targeted data centers of some of the U.S. largest companies. Example, Amazon Data Center, Meta. They have these, giant data centers, and they're being attacked, as are U.S. bases, consulates, hotels in various Gulf states. So again, the plan is clear here. But let's look at the market's reaction to this. You're looking at $9 oil. Gasoline prices are up in here from 23 to 30 cents a gallon. That's expected. The Strait of Hormuz has been effectively closed by threats. Now, again, 60% of the Iranian missiles have been taken out. I saw one report said 86. That's not true. Let's just call it somewhere in the 60 to 70 percentile, but that still leaves 30% still available. It doesn't take a whole lot of missile hits to cause disruption. We know those missiles are still targeted towards Israel, but they're also targeted to the Gulf states. Some have even gone towards Turkey. So, triggering Article 5 defense. So markets fell on disruption fears. The VIX spiked. And then we got, news that Trump wants to determine who the new leadership is in Iran. And only he will set the terms of accepting surrender. That's very Trumpian, but I expected that. He's the one that took the high-risk gamble along with Netanyahu of doing this exercise to rid the Iranians of their ability to produce nuclear weapons and regime change so that we could get a more Western-friendly, hopeful government in there. That's risky, but that's where we are. Are the Russians helping the Iranians? It sure looks like it is. It sure looks like it is. Russians are basically saying, if you're going to help the Ukrainians, we're going to help the Iranians. Okay. But again, somewhere 60 to 70% of those missile launchers have been removed. So how would you handicap it? Okay, the Senate, the House, they did not vote to impede Trump's power. I thought it was interesting. In a non-binding vote, 53 Democrats in the House, and of course the whole squad members, they voted against labeling Iraq one of the world's largest sponsors of terrorism. Why? Why? What part of their Democratic base? I know which part it is. It's the pro-Palestinian, anti-Trump, anti-war. That's why they did it. So, where is Trump on his support for the war? Depends on what poll you look at. Looking at polls we respect, Rasmussen, Insider Advantage, he's about 10 points upside down, 45-55. Well, that's not a shock considering it's going to get better day after day as the Iranians' missile supplies go down, as their rocket launchers go down, as we have more military success, the terms are going to get better. Bear in mind, we're 1 week into this now, day 7. And when it started, Trump told us it would be 4 weeks. So we're 1 quarter into this, have complete control over the skies over Iran. But again, on the ground, the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed. The head of Qatar said if this doesn't change fast, oil prices could go to $150 a barrel. He's right. And that would cause major disruption in the global economy, which we don't want to see. So, analyzing it from a strategic perspective, are the Israelis in the U.S. happy where they are right now? I would say so. The leadership has been extinguished. If you believe the reports about his son, a very weak leader being tapped to be the new leader of Iran, wouldn't want to take out a life insurance on this policy on him. No. The thing Trump has to do at this point is continue to garner the support at least 45% of the American public. If he's sitting there and we have more successes and this spike in oil comes down, you will get more favorable opinion on it. Bear in mind, you've got a hardcore group of 35% of Americans. They are just Trump derangement syndrome. They would not support Trump in this war if it was going even more successful. You got to factor that in mind. So, at the end of the day, forget why we're in it. We know why we're in it. We are where we are right now. And from listening to the reports of the generals that speak from Central Command, and when they get up on the podium, when Hegseth and General Kane, you get a striking picture of where we are. And I think by any stretch, if you would have told the president this is where you're going to be 7 days into it, I think he'd be perfectly happy. All right, let's tie in some economic news into what's going on here. Because we already mentioned about oil above 90. I don't think you may see it spike to 100 next week. But the administration came in with a $20 billion reinsurance plan for tankers going through the strait. I think that's going to help because bear in mind, one of the biggest costs of these tankers through the strait right now is insurance rates. If you can't insure them, they're not going to move. And they don't want to move if they think they're going to get hit by a missile. So I think that will help. But ultimately, disabling all the Iranian missile strikes, that's important. Now, can you get through all the drones? I don't know. That's where the West seemed to have underestimated Iran's ability. But we got some payroll news today. Okay. And it's not good, folks. I mean, this is not a good number. 92,000 job negative. We lost 92,000. Employers, they didn't hire, they cut 92,000 jobs. The unemployment rate, however, only ticked up 0.1%. So when you have an economy where you've got 133, 134 million people working, and to have that type of loss, I don't think that's going to move the needle too much. But here's where I do think it's going to have an effect. The Federal Reserve will be under pressure to lower interest rates sooner rather than later. Now, will they do it before Kevin Warsh, the new Fed appointee, is sworn in? I don't know. But I think they should. Because when you see a job loss like that, what's the Fed's mission? Price stability and full employment. They're not there on full employment right now. Now, inflation is a little bit high. You got oil prices spiking up. Temporarily, that's going to feed through a lot of the economy. So a lot of hawks would say we can't lower rates because of this inflation risk. A lot of doves say we have to. The employment number came in negative. Fed's got to analyze this and see where to go. But I do know this. I think it would be good for the country if they did tick these rates down a little bit. It would help with a lot of segments of the economy. And bear in mind, the Trump administration hasn't taken steps right now like using oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. They haven't done that, nor do I think they need to. So where it's having some effect, believe it or not, folks, Russia and China. Some of the shipping routes that they had on their oil have been disrupted. This is going to affect, obviously, the Ukraine-Russia war, but it's going to affect China and its industries too. So again, we're 7 days in. The economic piece is playing itself out. The oil piece is, the shipping lanes, the projectiles the Iranians are hurtling at their neighbors. A lot of chess pieces still to play out, folks. But again, day 7 going into this, both from an economic point of view and from a military perspective, I think a vast majority of the goals are being achieved. And war is difficult. As General Flynn would say, a lot of unexpected things happen when you're at war. And this is no different. All right, we're going to take a 30-second break. But when we come back, we're going to drill down into some other effects, talk about some of the other key news that's breaking. Stick with Schaftlein Report. 30 seconds. We'll be back.
Sadie, why don't more people know about the health benefits of glucodown soluble fiber? That it lowers blood sugar, especially after meals?
Gluco-Down drink mixes are enriched with soluble fiber for healthy blood sugar. It's diabetic-friendly nutrition, and it's clinically proven.
Gluco-Down's clinically proven soluble fiber helps maintain blood sugar in a healthy range, especially after meals.
Gluco-Down is a game changer.
Keep your blood sugar healthy. Try all 8 flavors of Gluco-Down.
Available at Amazon or in the diabetic care aisle at your local pharmacy.
And we're back. Okay, let's hit on some of the headline news over the past couple days. Trump firing Kristi Noem. Folks, you had to be living under a rock not to expect that one. I mean, things related to ICE, the public opinion went down drastically after Minneapolis. You know, you can't sit here and say again. And we're back. All right, and we're back. Okay, let's get to some of the earlier news that happened that last couple days. Donald Trump firing Kristi Noem. Again, you'd have to be living under a rock not to have expected this. The public's opinion of how Trump is managing ICE deteriorated once Minneapolis hit. 2 Americans were killed. And the worst part of it all was calling these people domestic terrorists. That was an exaggeration. That was really not even true. Yeah, they may have been hassling, but boy, I tell you what, the characterization, didn't match. The management style was coming into question. The answers at Senate hearings, it was turning into a big negative, and it made it really easy for Trump to replace her. A lot of controversy swirling around it. Not to say she didn't do a good job in the early days, because she did. But this past couple months have not been the finest moment. And I think with Trump announcing that both she's going, Lewandowski's going, we know we're not going to get into the rumors of that affair. You can choose to if you want. We're not going to cover that. But Mark Wayne Mullen, senator from Oklahoma, widely praised on both sides of the aisle, will have no trouble getting confirmed. And I happen to think very highly of Senator Mullen. I think he'll do an exceptional job. And it was crystal clear we needed a change. So that's taking place. Now, while this has been going on, folks, you may not have noticed it because A, we've had a war going on. B, the economic news coming out, ups and downs in the market. But the Department of Homeland Security still has not received their funding from Congress. The Senate voted it down again today. So we have a situation where they continue not to be funded. Take a quick break here. Turn those lights out, please. Turn those lights out. No, those. Okay, let's go back. You can cut that out. Let's go back to when I was talking about DHS shutdown. Can you edit that, Austin? Hello? Okay. All right. So, yeah, I can hear you fine. So just give me 3, 2, 1. All right. And while we are going to have a new head of Homeland Security in Mark Wayne Mullen, again, we did not get funding from the Senate or the House on the Department of Homeland Security. Folks, you still have a partial government shutdown with all this happening. Why? Because the Senate is refusing to advance it, get over that 60 vote threshold without concessions on ICE policies. So you wouldn't know it with everything going on, but we do have a DHS shutdown. Now, is it affecting ICE? No, ICE was funded for 3 years. But it is affecting Coast Guard pay. I was traveling this week. TSA, tell you what, those people do a great job. And, you go through airports, they're doing their job. They were paid at their last paycheck, but hopefully this gets resolved soon and we can get an impasse to this. But that's going on all while we have a war going on, and yet the Coast Guard's not being funded. You want TSA in there protecting us when we go through airport security? FEMA. What if we have a homeland disaster? FEMA, they have to get funded. So again, I think with step one, with Mark Wayne Mullen coming in, replacing Kristi Noem, that's going to be step one. The administration will probably have to compromise somewhere on some of these pieces. We have to get DHS fully funded. So I'm optimistic they'll do that. Now, while that's happening, Trump has made reference to the success of regime change in Venezuela. Well, it wasn't really regime change. We took Maduro, that emboldened Trump. But the new president, Delcy Rodriguez, Trump is heaving praise upon her. Why not? I mean, the government's stable. We have a friendly relationship with the government now. Oil is being produced. Revenues are coming to both the U.S. and to Venezuela. That was a complete success story with not a single loss of life on the U.S. side. Maduro's in jail waiting trial. And call it a U.S. puppet, call it a U.S. clone, call it whatever you want. A U.S. friendly president is now running Venezuela. And Trump's very happy about it. He's praised her twice this week in front of foreign dignitaries. So I think that's great news. Now, will Trump take the success of Venezuela and apply it to Iran? He probably will. That's why he came out and said he wanted to appoint the successor. I don't know if it's right that he's going to appoint it, but I think he's going to have a big say-so on who gets that position. And as he said earlier in the week, some of the people we thought could be successors were killed. So that's still to be determined. Let me give you a troubling stat that came out this week, folks. And this is not, we've talked about a lot of good stuff. We give it to you straight. As to who's to be trusted on the economy, it's almost even. Republicans only have a 1-point lead over the Democrats, 46 to 45%. That is shocking, folks. Donald Trump ran on being able to fix the economy. We've had so many good things happen, but inflation is still running 2.5, 2.6%, even at a slight uptick, 2.7. Unemployment is hovering about where it was when he came into office. And when you factor in the 92,000 job loss, we really haven't created jobs. But we've had a couple million people leave the country, many of whom were working. So it's a mixed review on how the economic view is of the average voter. Again, Republicans still have an advantage, but it's only a point. And again, Americans, when you have elections, it all comes down to the economy. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of successes in foreign policy. Venezuela, likely in Iran. People vote their pocketbook. And on this Iranian situation, if they can continue the success, if the U.S. military does, coupled with Israel, and that strait gets opened up and oil prices come back down, you're going to see some economic prosperity in this country. Bear in mind, we're still projected to grow 3 to 4%. That would be great news. So if you have a foreign policy success in Iran and the region becomes stable, that's going to bode very, very well for U.S. economic growth. And it couldn't happen at a better time as we go into the summer and then the fall when people make up their mind about who they're going to vote for. Bear in mind, 35% are Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, they would literally, you heard the old saying, a yellow dog. They'd vote for a yellow dog if he was running against Trump. That's an old saying. So you're going to have that against him, regardless of how well the economy is doing or how well the war in Iran is going. Let me give you a troubling statistic here, folks. And this speaks generationally, I think. 3 years ago, 2023, on the question of capitalism versus socialism, it was a blowout. 67% preferred capitalism, 23% preferred socialism. You know, the left wing of the Democratic Party are basically socialist. Now, fast forward 2026, that number, 51-25. Still a big, almost 2-to-1 margin. But the socialists, the Bolsheviks, the communists, they've picked up 16 points in the past 3 years. Why is that? Because a lot of young people are leaning left. They're saying, wait a minute, I can't afford a house. I got all this student debt. My income is barely keeping up with inflation. And they see a tilt to where there's a wider gap between the wealthy and the haves versus the have-nots. You got to be careful with this because economic prosperity needs to spread out among all classes, not just the upper 10% or the millionaire billionaire class. That's not going to get it done. So that's why a broadening of the economic pie, growing the pie, is helpful towards gaining ground with all Americans, regardless of what social class or economic class you're in. That's really important, folks. We do have to grow. If we grow that economy at 3 to 4%, as I think we will, oil prices come back down as a result of military success in the region with Iran. That's going to filter through the economy. The Fed lowers interest rates. Jobs start getting created. I think the economic picture will turn around, and it will turn around by this summer. I really believe that's where we're going to be headed here. Because bear in mind, until we had this blip in oil prices, the stock market right now, it's roughly 3.25% below its all-time high. Remember, the Dow hit 50,000 not too long ago. It's at 47 and change right now. So you're not too far off of it. So it is important, though. Bear in mind, we do have to get some stability through that Strait of Hormuz. That's really important because you could see oil prices spike to 100. You do not want to see them spike higher than that. That could cause some economic disruption, albeit for a short period of time. So we do want to see it. Bear in mind, the Qataris warned could go higher. So let's summarize what we've seen here. In the last week, militarily, a lot of success from the Israelis in the U.S. There's complete chaos at the top of the Israeli command chain. 50 some odd leaders at least were killed. The U.S. has sunk numerous ships in the Navy, destroying their Air Force. But again, they still have an ability to fight back with missiles and drones, and that poses a severe threat to the region. A lot of people in the region are saying, wait a minute, we didn't sign up for this, and we're getting hit. Now, you might think, well, they were going to become U.S. allies. That's true. But from their perspective, how much pain are those nations willing to go through to achieve this long-term success? I know the Saudis are. I know, obviously, the Israelis are. But again, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, these are small countries. Kuwait. So, again, Trump said this would be 4 weeks, maybe longer. So we have to see how this plays itself out. But again, despite some criticism on the left, so far so good on the operations side. Thank goodness we have some great commanders, great officers, and great people carrying out these missions. The finest military in the world, as Trump has repeatedly said. A friend of mine said, you know what the 3 largest air forces in the world are? I said, yes, I do. The United States Air Force, the United States Navy, and the United States Marine Corps. So keep that in mind, folks. And then economically, blip on Wall Street. Yeah, we're down 3.25%. Oil prices up. You're going to feel it at the pump for the next 30 days. But I believe things will settle down. And then the change at DHS, I think that's a good thing. Again, I applaud Kristi Noem on what she did while she was there. But Trump had to make that change. And again, it was no surprise to anybody. Politically, no change on the Democratic side. They still have the same people up at the top. No real change on our side either. Now, let's close it out with this. Special tribute. Coach Lou Holtz passed away this week at the age of 89. Legendary figure in college football. Holtz was the coach of the 1988 national champion Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So a special salute to Lou Holtz, tremendous college football coach, tremendous man, very, very religious supporter, taught it feverishly, a man of great moral character. Lou Holtz, an icon in the college football world. Okay, folks, that's it for today. Covered a lot of ground. Lots going to happen over the weekend. We'll be back early next week to cover that. Again, stick with the United States. We're doing a fantastic job. We support the president. We support our troops. God bless America and God bless our troops. See you next week, folks.
AI is everywhere, but none of it does everything. Until now, meet Real Intelligence, RI, the one AI that does it all better. It generates cinema-quality 4K videos, unreal images, and award-worthy music, all in one platform. RI even writes code and handles advanced research at your command. No more juggling multiple apps or settling for less. Your creativity deserves one powerhouse. Real Intelligence, better at everything, all in one place. Try RI now for free at tryrinow.com.